Jacob is certainly one of the shining characters of the Old Testament. And I would say whether you agree with me or not, whether you're happy with me saying this or not, I'm still going to say it. There is a measure of Jacobness in all of us. Yes? That's why we all like Jacob, because as you read through Jacob's life, you kind of see a little bit of ourselves in him, in some of the things that he does, the way that he goes about to do things. The name Jacob literally meant supplanter, the one who supplants, the one who deceives. That's basically what his name was. Unlike Jabez, he didn't pray for God to change his name immediately. He kind of lived his name for quite a while. As you read through a little bit of his biography of Jacob, that's all he did. In the Hebrew, the name Jacob is similar to how we pronounce it in Tamil, which is Jacob. And Jacob is a play on words. And basically, Jacob means the one who grabs the heel, the one who's a heel grabber. And that's exactly what happened. And I think the name was almost literal when it was given to him, because at the time of birth, he was one of a twin. And when his brother was coming out, he literally was hanging on to the heel of his brother. In other words, the midwife who saw and witnessed the birth said, "You're a little rambunctious one. You're trying to get ahead of your brother," because he wanted to beat his brother even coming out of his mother's womb. And that's how Jacob was from the very get-go. He was always coming up with, devising ways in which he could get one better off his brother. It's almost like he knew he was meant to be the older brother, and he just wasn't the older brother, but he was going to get to be the older brother by crook or whatever way he was going to achieve it. He deceived his own father with the help of his mother. It must have been quite a complicated family that he was in, because mom picked sides and the father picked sides, and they both were warring with one another through their children. So basically what happened was Jacob was convinced by his mom, saying, "Hey, your dad's about to bless your brother and literally speak the blessing of the birthright, blessing of the generational blessing. So here's what you're going to do. Your brother's a little hairy and scary, so you're going to go and put on the lambskin, and you're going to just feel when your father touches you and smells you, you're going to smell and feel like your brother, and I'm going to cook better than your brother can cook, and you're going to steal the blessing that's meant for your brother Esau. You're going to take it." And that's exactly what he did. And it's not just one incident that he does. It was kind of a recurring thing in Jacob's life. In a way, Jacob's life was filled with kind of like the name suggests, supplanting. He was always trying to get ahead, but not in the right way. If you saw the theme of Jacob's life, it basically was he wanted to be blessed. That's what it was. Yeah? He wanted his life to matter. He wanted the hand of God to be upon him. He wanted God to bless him, God to prosper him. That's why he was searching for this meaning, this significance in life, which is not a wrong thing to ask for the blessing of God. As we saw last week, Jabez asked for it, received it. But the problem with Jacob was the way in which he sought the blessing of God. He did not seek the blessing of God by going to God himself and getting it, but rather he sought the blessing of God by trying to steal it from the people who had received it. See the difference? In other words, Jacob intended to have the blessing of God without knowing God. He wanted God to bless him. He wanted God to prosper him, but he didn't want to have a relationship with God. He would rather do it through backdoor deals with his brother. He would rather do it with all these secret missions that he did with his mother. He would rather have the blessing of God, which is what it was. It was God's blessing. And God gave it to him, and yet Jacob, the way that he sought for and looked for the blessing of God was not in the right manner. And I think that's why sometimes we see the similarity in Jacob when we read his life, because sometimes we do that. We want God to bless us. We want God to prosper us. We want God to give us, significance for our life, but we don't want to do it his way. We want to do it our way. And I think that's where the struggle comes, and that's where Jacob struggled with in all his life, where he was always receiving or searching for and grabbing the blessing of God, but not in the right manner that God intended for him. And that's why God had to bring Jacob to kind of a tipping point, a breaking point, so that he would finally have that realization that it is God who blesses. It's God of Israel who determines the destiny of people. And that's why the whole prayer of Jacob is so significant, because it was almost like when Jacob prayed that prayer by the river Jabbok, that was where he began to have a fresh revelation of how God operates and how God blesses. And from that day forward, Jacob's life was never, ever the same again. God changed him, changed his name, and gave him a different destiny than what was meant for him.